Brady Cook and Luther Burden are both gone, and now the reins fall to Bo Perbola, transfer quarterback from Penn State. And I do think that Missouri is going to struggle a little bit this year, not necessarily because they're going to be a bad team, but they just have an incredibly difficult schedule. It starts off with a very winnable game, though. Obviously, they're going to beat Central Arkansas, and then it's Kansas, this one at home. Jalen Daniels has, again, a lot of hype around him this season, and I don't know if it's warranted anymore at this point. I think that he has potential for sure, but the fact that he's never lived up to it just concerns me a little bit about Kansas. Lance Leopold's done a really good job there turning the program around, though. So I do think that Kansas is going to give Missouri a really good game. And even though Mizzou's at home, we're actually going to take the Jayhawks on the road in this one. I think it'll be close, but there's a lot of firepower on this Kansas team, and I'm a little bit worried about this Missouri defense.
Especially because this is the revival of this rivalry game. It's the revival of the Border War. Hasn't been played since 2011, which Mizzou won as well. I think Kansas has been waiting for 14 years to finally get their get back against Mizzou, and I think this is a year that they can do it. Even though Kansas is losing a lot of key players on offense, particularly in the wide receiver room, I do think we are going to see Jalen Daniels finally break out and become that high level quarterback that everyone is expecting him to be. And maybe early on, this Mizzou offense struggles with Bo Perbola. He did have one solid game against Wisconsin, but other than that, he doesn't have a lot of starting experience. So that might be what cost Mizzou this game. They'll get back in the win column, though, the following week against Louisiana. Not a gimme game. Louisiana is one of the better group of five teams out there, but I do think Mizzou should be able to handle them, especially with a defense that is bringing in Damon Wilson the second, one of the most highly sought after edge rushers in the transfer portal this year. Should be a wrecking ball on that defense and will lead Mizzou to a win over Louisiana. Then it's South Carolina the next week, also at home. And that might be something that makes this game just a little bit closer because they're going to need all the advantages that they can get because this South Carolina team is going to be really, really good next year. Norris Sellers is back at quarterback after a phenomenal redshirt freshman season, and he nearly led this Gamecocks team to the college football playoffs if it wasn't for a costly mistake against Alabama and a controversial ending to the LSU game. We very well could have seen South Carolina in the playoffs last year. But now this year, they have lost a couple guys on the defense. That defensive line was one of the reasons they were so competitive last year. They have some of that defensive line remaining, along with a couple young guys that they could easily develop into the next round of great pass rushers. I think the South Carolina team is going to be a really scary team for the rest of the SEC to play against. And even though Mizzou is playing at home, this is just not going to be a game that they can easily win if they even win this at all. I think the Gamecocks get the win here, dropping Mizzou to 2-2.
They'll hop back above 500 briefly against UMass with a pretty easy win there. And then they have a bye week to prepare for Alabama. The Crimson Tide should be much better in year two under Kalen DeBoer. The starting quarterback position still somewhat unknown, though it seems pretty likely that Ty Simpson is going to, in fact, be the starting quarterback. Jalen Milroe obviously gone to the NFL. Ryan Williams is also returning at the wide receiver position, the second best wide receiver in all of college football. He's going to have another really good year, and I think he's a great safety valve for a young quarterback like Ty Simpson to have. And I was kind of mentioning I was concerned about the Missouri defense earlier. I'm very concerned about their secondary being able to contain this Alabama passing attack, which I think will be very potent this season. So I think Bama pretty easily wins this one on the road.
It doesn't get much easier with back-to-back road games after that loss to Alabama. First up is a road trip to Jordan-Hare Stadium to face the Auburn Tigers. Now, Auburn has gotten a ton of offseason hype, and some of it is a little warranted. They have brought in a couple big transfers, like Jackson Arnold to be their starting quarterback from Oklahoma. But I do think it's a little over the top. We do this every year with Auburn. I don't think they're going to be quite a top 25 team just yet, or a team competing for an SEC championship. I think that is a future goal, not necessarily for this season, but we can see some improvement. And I do think that it is a pretty equal matchup against Mizzou. The one thing we haven't talked about for this Mizzou team, though, is that they have brought in Ahmad Hardy from UL Monroe to be their starting running back. He's going to be their workhorse for the season and maybe can be the difference in some of these games. But I do think Auburn at home is a tough team to beat, especially coming off of a loss to Alabama that I think will be a bit of a blowout, even if it is a home game for the Tigers there. I think Auburn is going to upset Mizzou here. That's going to be a big win for the program as they're striving to remain relevant or return to more relevancy. And the following week, speaking of relevant, is against Vanderbilt. The Commodores were the Cinderella team last year, upsetting Alabama as the number one team in the country after their win over Georgia. And they're returning the man who ignited the season, Diego Pavia, as their starting quarterback. And he's going to be the focal point of this offense, along with Eli Stowers, his lead tight end, back again. But the rest of the weapons are going to be a little bit questionable, but the defense that the Commodores are bringing back is going to be pretty solid. Maybe not as good as some of the other SEC teams because the SEC defenses are absolutely loaded with the likes of Georgia, Texas, Alabama. But I do think it's going to be pretty decent considering how many starters are returning from last season. And I think if they continue to develop and grow based off of their production last year, I think the Vandy defense can become a scary defense to play against. And once again, I just think Mizzou is going to fall short in this game, especially on the road. Vandy's home field advantage is great, but this is just a tough three stretch of games in between the bye weeks. And I think Vandy will be able to get the job done here and once again upset Mizzou.
After the second bye week, they go back home to face Marcel Reed and Texas A&M. This is another game where I'm concerned about the passing threat of the opposing team against this Missouri secondary. I think that it most likely is going to end up being a shootout, and I trust Texas A&M's defense way more than I would trust Missouri's in this case. So we do have the Tigers dropping to 3-6 after this one, in danger of missing out on a bowl game. They'll fight back the next week against Mississippi State, and the Bulldogs, once again, probably going to be the worst team in the SEC. Really nothing to look forward to on this team. And I think that Missouri should be able to pick up an SEC win here, moving them to 4-6.
And it's two road games to end the season, and neither one of these are going to be very easy. First one is Oklahoma, and Oklahoma hit the transfer portal hard, bringing in one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in John Matier from Washington State. We know how Washington State transfer quarterbacks have worked out in the past, particularly with Cam Ward last season, now the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. But they also went and got Jaden Ott, running back from Cal, and he was also one of the most sought after transfer portal players and was a big reason we thought Cal was going to be good going into the season before they had that mass exodus of players, including Ott. Now Oklahoma is looking like a dangerous team, one of our dark horses in the SEC. It's a bit of a long shot because their schedule is, I think, the most difficult in all of college football by strength of schedule. I do think the home field advantage that the Sooners have is one of the more underrated ones. And once again, I just think that the skill players that Oklahoma has outclass the ones that Mizzou has. Maybe Ahmad Hardy can compete with Jaden Ott, but I think Matier will outdo Perbola. And I think Oklahoma's defense will be able to get a stop against this Mizzou offense. And this pretty much seals Mizzou's hopes of not making a bowl game. They have one last chance on the road against Arkansas, but that is not going to be an easy game either. Taylen Green returning as the starting quarterback for the Razorbacks, a young, athletic quarterback. Maybe needs to develop a little bit more as a passer, but his dual threat ability does bring a lot to the table. And Arkansas did pull off an upset last year against Tennessee, who did make the college football playoffs. And I think they can make some strides forward. I don't think they're going to finish too much above 500 if they even get to 500, but I do think they will be good for a couple upsets here and there, like this game. I think Arkansas manages to pull off yet another upset over Mizzou. We just think Mizzou is going to get unlucky in some of these games. There's just a little bit of uncertainty at some of the positions, particularly with Bo Perbola. We just need to see how he pans out. And if he is not the quarterback that everyone is expecting him to be, then there's a chance Mizzou's season goes downhill really quick. And this could be the culmination of it. It was a close game at home for the Tigers last year, winning 28 to 21. I think with the home field advantage flipped, I think Arkansas can pull off the upset. And this puts Mizzou at 4-8 for the season, a tremendous downgrade from last year.
And it's also a downgrade from our way too early prediction of 6-6. The projected win total was 6.85 wins. That actually stayed exactly the same despite multiple games being adjusted up and down, 3.3 and 4.7 in SEC play. The good news for Missouri, though, is I think this is the worst that they could possibly get. The floor is that exact 4-8 record that we have predicted. The ceiling, though, if Bo Perbola turns out to be a really solid quarterback, it's still a really tough schedule. We're not going to see Missouri in the college football playoffs by any means, but I do think that they could get to a respectable 8-4, somewhere around 500 in SEC play. That being said, though, I really think that they're much more likely to get near the floor, which, like we have predicted, is 4-8. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.